but my relationship with George is more of an older uncle. I'm old enough to be his father. I wouldn't be here. I would not be risking myself. How do you know that in your heart?
How do you know in your heart?
Have you ever had a gut feeling?
You were not there.
Have you ever had a gut feeling?
You've said for you the entire thing, your entire view, comes down to a gut feeling. That's all it is. And okay, and I'm glad you clarified that.
Not just a gut feeling.
Joe,
not
Joe,
just, look,
on.
I've
Joe,
asked questions. I've asked questions. Can I answer that?
You know what,
Can I ask you why it's a gut feeling and why I feel good about it? Because it's an instinctual thing, and it's also because I've had what I have been told validated. I'll agree with you. My role in this, I agree, just doesn't make sense.
We obviously had some lighting problems during that interview, and the man who killed Trayvon Martin has a new lawyer today, and the defense team's first order of business was to get rid of Joe Oliver. Joe Oliver, the man you just saw, who has been making the media rounds, presenting himself as a friend of George Zimmerman, and was generally getting softball interviews until he appeared on this show. When he was here, he insisted that he wasn't being paid, but he told NBC News today that he would no longer be the Zimmerman family media advisor. Today, 2 agents for the state special prosecutor's office canvassed the area where Trayvon was shot and interviewed residents. The new lawyer on the case, Hal Uhrig, is an experienced defense attorney and an experienced TV talker. He did a lot of local television legal analysis of the Casey Anthony trial in Florida. He is also a former police officer and a former prosecutor. The file that he is opening today in defense of George Zimmerman has some serious problems in it. Here to summarize the case as it stands tonight are Eugene O'Donnell, a former New York City police officer and prosecutor, and Charles M. Blow, editorial writer for the New York Times. Thank you both for joining me tonight. I just want to summarize what I think this lawyer's looking at in his file tonight. And Eugene, one procedural point I want to start with quickly that predates the shooting, which is George Zimmerman's arrest record. He got arrested once for battery against a police officer. His fiance got a restraining order against him. Would any of that be admissible in a criminal trial?
Prosecutors are obviously, if they decide to move here, are going to look for all of that to see whether it can be used. So it's going to very much depend on the specifics. Not only, by the way, things that were charged criminally, but also the idea that he made these calls, these prior calls, these 50 calls he made. So evidence of his state of mind and prior bad acts and things that he did, whether they were proven criminally or not, prosecutors are going to seek to introduce them to lay a foundation for understanding who he is.
Okay, so the lawyer starts his file with the 911 call made by George Zimmerman as he's following Trayvon Martin. Let's listen to a piece of that that has a problem in it for Zimmerman.
Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that. Okay.
Okay, there's problem number 1, Charles, in the 911 call.
Right. That's only one of the problems in the 911 call, because what you have to figure out is, number 1, what is the nature of the suspicion? Why is it that Trayvon Martin, this is not his first time to that subdivision, he'd been there several times with his father before. What is it about Trayvon Martin that night that draws George Zimmerman's attention? Number 2,
which is the only thing stated, black.
Well, right. And he says he looks like he may be on drugs.
But
he may
Eugene,
be wandering around.
He could have easily said, as people will say, it looks like he's carrying a weapon. It looks like, I mean, and this is a 20% black community.
Right.
It's not like this is some rarity.
Right, right. So you have that establishing the motive. What is the threat response that's activated in George Zimmerman that says that this person, this young man, who he knows is a teenager, he says in the beginning of the 911 tape, they ask him about how old he is. He says he looks like he's in his late teens. He knows he's a young person. He knows he has on a hooded sweatshirt, and that is they ask him about race. He identifies what he believes his race is. That's pretty much all we know. So what is it about that makes George Zimmerman exit the truck knowing that he has a gun on him and follow Trayvon Martin?
I would say there's a jury credibility issue moment in there where the dispatcher says to him, "Are you following him?" "Yes." "We don't need you to do that." Zimmerman's response is, "Okay," right. Which anyone on the other end of the phone believes, "Okay, I'm not going to do that." He then goes on to do it. There's also upcoming in the 911 call this racial slur. Let's just play that very quickly.
Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that. Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Not everyone, a lot of people listening to that think they hear a racial slur. That is a problem as you go through this file. Let's put these issues up on the big board here. The problems in this file, number one is that there's that 911 call from Zimmerman where he ends up, in effect, testifying against himself in certain ways. You then go to sequentially, Trayvon Martin's girlfriend says she's on the phone with him, and she's got phone records to prove she's on the phone with him, and he is telling her there's somebody following me. The next thing in the sequence here is a 911 call where we hear someone screaming for help. Let's listen to that call.
I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick. Say stop.
Okay. Does he look hurt?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right. What is your phone number?
Just there's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
How many?
Just one.
And it turns out the most important evidence provided in that call is not from the person making the call, but from the person who is screaming in the background. And number 4 in your file, you discover tonight that audio experts who've analyzed it have said that is not George Zimmerman's voice. And Charles, this is key to George Zimmerman's story. He says, that was me. I was crying for help.
Exactly. And so if you can establish that it is not George Zimmerman's voice on that tape, the only other person that we know of is outside in that altercation is Trayvon Martin. So then you have to say, why would a person who is attacking, and as George Zimmerman's family has said, punching George Zimmerman in the face, slamming his head into the concrete, why would that person who is on top winning a fight screaming for help and what sounds like screaming for his life? It doesn't add up if it is as the audio experts say.
And there's more. Let's go to the next item. We have another list of items in this file. There's an eyewitness account that was picked up by CNN last week, and I think we may have a clip of that we can run right now. We don't have the clip, but that man told CNN that what he was looking at in the dark, he couldn't tell who was who, but as soon as the screaming stopped, it seemed like the person on top in this altercation, the person on top instantly got up. That would contradict George Zimmerman's account. He says he was on the bottom when he had to shoot Trayvon Martin. Then you have the police report. The next stage is we get him down to the police station, but on the site they have a police report saying he had a bloody nose, cuts in the back of his head. Then you go to the Sanford Police Department video of George Zimmerman appearing. I think we have some of that video to roll now of George Zimmerman appearing at the police station, and you don't see any evidence of a bloody nose. You don't see cuts in the back of the head. And very, very importantly, Eugene O'Donnell, you don't see any kind of blood splatter. And you would think with a chest wound, a bullet chest wound against Trayvon Martin, whose body is supposed to be on top of yours, you would think that George Zimmerman would be covered in Trayvon Martin's blood.
Right, and the whole idea here is the totality of the evidence, and when you start adding the evidence together, what you're seeing is that the control, who precipitated the events. As you lay the evidence together, you're seeing that there's much less of a case that Mr. Zimmerman was not the controller of the events. That Trayvon Martin was stalked, was essentially isolated by this man, and that in the light most favorable to the suspect, there'd be only a few seconds where Trayvon Martin had a chance to act. All of the actions leading up to precipitating this act, the evidence shows, so far at least, that they're in the hands of George Zimmerman.
And then, Charles Blow, as you're kind of rounding out what you can know as Zimmerman's attorney tonight, putting this file together, well, what does homicide say about it? It turns out that what you can gather so far is that the lead homicide detective on this believed he had a manslaughter case on his hands.
Exactly. They did not believe George Zimmerman. The lead homicide detective did not believe George Zimmerman's story was credible. And that, I think, will be crucial if a charge is ever brought and this goes to trial. That his opinion and what made them not charge George Zimmerman, what in the consultation with Bill Lee and the state attorney, what was that conversation? And is there any documentation of that conversation? And how was that decision swayed?
Really, what was there other than his word that would make them have a doubt? And it was detailed by the police as though there was some sort of rich layer of evidence, but it really was only his word, as far as we can tell.
And Zimmerman's first lawyer was asked about any medical records. Do you have anything to show us, any documentation of treating these injuries? And he just wouldn't answer the question. And if you had a hospital record from the next day or from any time period even close to this, you'd say, yeah, we have this.
And the truth is that a person who righteously uses deadly force on somebody, they don't have to misrepresent. They don't have to embellish. They tell the story the way it is. They tell it straight up. It's when you catch people in falsehoods or embellishments that your red flags go up.
Charles, there's so many. I mean, I tried to get the basic things that we're looking at. It seems to me the only thing that the lawyer can be happy about when he looks in the file is just this little section of a police report that says, oh, bloody nose and cut on the back of the head.
Right, and even there you have to look at the severity of those injuries if they in fact do exist, because you have to figure out, is this a situation where George Zimmerman could, as a reasonable person would believe that he could have extricated himself from that situation with physical force, or was lethal force required for you to extricate yourself from that situation? And that will, I think, in some way hinge on how severe the injuries are.
And just quickly, if you got a little scrape on the back of your head, did you get that tonight, or did you get that yesterday, or how did that happen? It could have happened anyway. Eugene O'Donnell, former New York City police officer and prosecutor, and Charles M. Blow, editorial writer for the New York Times. Thank you both very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.